Obedience by output. A dashboard flashes red, a checklist blocks approval, and a meeting ends with "the system says no." The cost is immediate. Time wasted, responsibility blurred, and judgment outsourced to a box no one can explain. People obey systems they do not understand, because the system's output becomes the cheapest, safest proxy for accountability inside constrained organizations. Power in technological societies often arrives wearing the mask of measurement, not because the measurement is perfect, but because it fits the incentives and constraints of crowded work. Begin with a constraint. Attention is finite and time is scarce. In a workplace shaped by notifications, queues, and approvals, no one can inspect every decision at full depth. A manager cannot review each edge case. A team cannot debate every exception. An auditor cannot rerun every judgment. Under this constraint, systems win by compressing complexity into a single status: pass-fail, green-red, approved-denied, ranked-not ranked. Now add an incentive. Risk moves upward, blame moves downward. When outcomes are uncertain, a person wants a defensible trail. "I followed the checklist" is safer than "I applied judgment," because a checklist can be shown, forwarded, archived. This creates a feedback loop. The more people defend themselves with system outputs, the more those outputs are treated as authoritative. The more they are treated as authoritative, the more everyone depends on them to protect themselves. The system becomes a shield, and shields are obeyed. There is also a trade-off that rarely stays visible. Systems offer speed, consistency, and scale. They trade away context, nuance, and local knowledge. A ranking model can process thousands of items, but it cannot see what it was never permitted to measure. A compliance workflow can enforce uniform steps, but it cannot detect when the steps no longer fit the situation. Yet the organization rewards throughput and standard process, so the trade-off is accepted quietly: less meaning for more manageability. Another mechanism: legibility. Systems are designed to be legible to oversight, not to reality. What gets measured is what can be counted. What can be counted is what can be compared. What can be compared is what can be rewarded. This is a second-order effect. Once the system's metrics become the path to approval, people reshape their work to satisfy the metric, not the mission. The output looks objective precisely because it is consistent, and it is consistent precisely because it ignores what would complicate it. Consider a generic example. A ticketing queue assigns priority numbers. The algorithm may be simple, even crude, but it is embedded into approvals, meeting agendas, staffing plans, and weekly reports. A human could override it, but overriding requires time, explanation, and political cost. It is often the lowest friction path through a crowded corridor. This is why not understanding does not prevent obedience. Understanding is expensive. Obedience can be cheap. And once the system is woven into incentives, bonuses, evaluations, deadlines, audits, the system's opacity becomes irrelevant to daily compliance. The system does not need to be trusted as true. It only needs to be trusted as binding. Finally, systems borrow authority from the appearance of neutrality. A person's judgment is visible, and therefore contestable. A system's score looks like weather: impersonal, unavoidable. That aesthetic, numbers, charts, automated language, reduces conflict in the short term. It also relocates power away from deliberation toward whoever sets the thresholds, chooses the proxies, and decides what counts as evidence. This mechanism reveals values. When a community gives its attention primarily to dashboards and outputs, it is declaring that manageability outranks understanding. When responsibility is expressed as "the system required it," the human role shifts from moral agent to process node. Attention is not merely focus, it is endorsement. What receives attention receives care, funding, and protection. Over time, people learn that meaning is found where the approvals are, not where the work is. The result is a quiet erosion. Responsibility becomes procedural, and authority becomes technical. Power hides in defaults, in forms, in pre-filled fields, in what cannot be appealed. The danger is not that systems exist. Constraints are real. The danger is that outputs replace interpretation. When the system's proxy is treated as the thing itself, the community's capacity for judgment atrophies. People remain intelligent, yet act as if they are not permitted to understand. That is a specific kind of power. The power to narrow what can be questioned by narrowing what can be seen. Consider a single recent moment when you said, thought, or heard, "We can't because the system." Notice what was being protected in that sentence: time, safety, status, predictability, harmony, or something else. Name the proxy that stood in for judgment and examine what it made invisible. The output is not the authority. The structure around the output is.